All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Imris Saga, Rising Shadows, Chapter 3, Session 1. How's everybody doing today? We're all doing well. I'll tell you that. I don't want to forward it to these chuckleheads.
I was going to say, he has to tell you all we're doing fine so that we don't say something wildly inappropriate.
I can tell you were trying not to swear when you said chuckleheads.
I was going to go for the F-bomb, but then I was like, I don't know why, because I've certainly sworn on stream.
Money changed you, man.
Several times.
He changed.
But yeah, thank you for that reminder, Sean. We are now affiliates on Twitch, so you can actually subscribe to us on Twitch and give us money. You should do that. We get.
All money you give us goes to art.
Yeah, all money that you would give us at the moment would go to art, or if somebody was in dire financial straits for something. And we actually don't get paid until we get. I think this is public knowledge. I don't think I can't say this. I should maybe read some more of the letter.
I don't think anything you can't say Twitch cares if you say.
Yeah, I mean, enough people are affiliates that this must be common knowledge. We don't get paid out until we make at least $100. So. That's the first goal, I guess, is to get...
We're on track for that in 20 months' time right now.
I think we need like 25 subs or a certain amount of ad rev to get paid out, basically. We're 2 there, so we're like 10% of the way. So go ahead, drop your subscription on our Twitch channel.
What you're really saying, Andrew, is that our taxes are not going to get more complicated in the near or distant future. No. And also take this as a casual reminder for everybody to do your taxes. Well, not Jack.
I'm not okay with that.
Jack doesn't have to.
We are trying to.
Jack doesn't have to remember that. What does the Australian government do? Just be like, "Oi, mate, £5 or whatever." Fucking attack.
We all go in racist Australian accents,
I think you
and
guys
then use a British form of currency to not do taxes. And we do taxes the same, probably, except we pay our accountants less.
Is it like 5 boomerangs? I'm really not sure what you guys
have slang for.
I think they're called millennialangs at this point.
We use the same slang as you use for.
Yeah, okay, that's what I figured. This is the dollar.
Andrew tried to avoid this by not asking us how we were doing, and yet
Andrew did try and avoid the racism against Australia.
Hold on. It's not racist if it's against a group that isn't people. Let's be clear.
Wow.
Sure. I want everybody to know categorically that this is my experience of these people other than Marisa at all times upstream.
Yes, at all times we are just constantly dunking on Jack.
Exactly on the hour, and I leave immediately, and I never interact with these people.
Occasionally we have an animated graphic above Jack, like Andrew, because he's above camera-wise, will hold like a basket hoop, and whenever we alley-oop, Sean will just get a basketball and dunk it in, you know?
That would take far more graphical ability than any of us have.
And I do all of the graphics for this show.
All right.
This is on behalf of all the fucking rangers in Australia. I'll have y'all know.
The rangers? I don't know what that
lies.
means.
Well, they either dye their hair or they get beaten to death.
This is true. Rangers, by the way, is the Australian slang for redheads because we look like orangutans.
It's
wow.
I mean,
wow.
Yeah.
And you want to talk about racism, Jack?
But firstly, I don't do that. Well, you have been openly racist to me today. But secondly, that's if you're below 10. After 10, you can think of more vile things to say about people with red hair.
This is true.
Man.
I think at this juncture, it's fair to say that if anybody gets dunked on, it's me by Jack.
I dunk on
you should be taller so you can play better defense. Like,
how tall are all of you? I don't think I know that.
Hold on. We're not doing a whole height thing.
My Bumble profile says 6 foot, but I am only 5'11", and this caused a fight.
Does your fiance know that?
Well, okay, I don't have the Bumble foot profile anymore. It's how I got the fiance, but it did cause a fight a couple months into the relationship when she was like, wait, why does your driver's license say 5'11"? On your Bumble profile, it said 6 foot. And
you're into that.
And then it was like, wow, you started this relationship with a lie. Hey, I just didn't want to get like left swipe for a Listen, people can't tell height above 5'8" anyways. No one has, and plus people lie about 6 inches all the time.
Wow. Okay, moving on. Last session, we had a bit of some shopping. People did some relaxation and various things. And we had kind of ended right before the party was going to get together to do some planning for the future. Not really planning, more of a like, I don't know what, sit down, recap type thing. So we rejoin all of you sitting around the coffee table as we are often wont to do at Melfindian's Tower in Tal'Anfagon. I think this is happening probably end of the first week or so, so that you, I mean, somebody correct me if I'm wrong. You still have like some time afterwards for doing things. You all have been training, buying various equipment, and just kind of getting yourselves prepared to journey back to the Khor Mountains. Eventually,
That reminds me. There's one potion I wanted to buy before we leave.
Sure, I'll give you guys a second to do any last minute purchasing after we do the.
How much would you charge to just buy a potion of speed?
Again, we'll do the shopping after we do the
Okay.
in-character conversation. Yes, so you guys are all sitting around. Cala is there. I'm assuming Cala is there, unless you don't want them there still.
Keller's there.
Okay.
Keller's as important a part of this team as other members, and more important than some, like Mel.
True. Mel's, in the background, he's kind of. He made the coffee.
He's making us coffee.
Yeah, he made the coffee, and then he's kind of just like doing his own thing. Well, I don't want to say children, but in his eyes, children talk. So, you guys have to kind of discuss or to go over all the information we gather. I'll just start by recapping some of the things that happened that might be relevant. So you prevented the demon attack on. You guys could hear this. The demon attack on Iracondis. You killed one of the Narangor in Kalosanon. There was also some. I keep forgetting how much of the party knows about Medea's thing, but Medea encountered some cultists at one point on the solo venture.
Medea would have filled everybody in about everything except the last part of that. Like the very, very last part.
And then Sulveran also, I think in that case, this is probably where that's really happening. So, Sulveran, you hear the part about the purple-eyed barbarian. This percolates your memory about what Kalatka told you on the mountain. Leave it to you. Do some of the things.
I like your coffee pun there, Andrew. Sulveran just very slowly, because he's normally rather sprawled in his various seats, rises up to sit more forward, and his coffee cup just hits the table with a decisive clunk. Would you tell us more about this barbarian? And as he says so, he's looking over to Will, because Will and then Ube. Is Ube there? We're just.
Yeah, Ube is there with Kojin. They're snacking on some things.
Right,
If I remember correctly, I got pretty good on the history check when I was remembering them, and they were a hero from. They seemed to be some sort of half Chonag hero, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, from north of this area.
What was their name? I have it somewhere in my notes. I just don't want to dig it up right now.
Oh, geez. I didn't think. I'll go try to find it, but you remember their name.
Yeah. Mindy will say, well, I remember they were half Chonag. They'd come up through the mountains to come here. They were a dead hero from quite some time ago. Half Chonag, half Gathite. They spent their life fighting. They made notability for their work, and are seen as quite generous in their life. But they supposedly died quite a time ago.
And when they fought you, there was no vestige, no lingering remainder of what they were?
They seemed to maintain some parts of how they fought in their life, but their memory, their personality, didn't seem to still, well, remain.
Yeah, I think Medea would probably say that they seemed maybe slightly insane, or have some
Yeah,
kind
it's as if they were seeing something else in the world rather than what was really there. They didn't have, instead of being directly compelled or controlled by something else, it's if they were being driven mad by some source. Likely magic. Whatever reanimated them probably does that.
And then above board, Andrew, Ramona, because I'm trying to remember. Did you say specifically that they were two, or is that just me recalling from the being in the session?
that
Was
you
there
know
two?
of, or in
Or am
the
I
fight?
thinking of a different session
There
here?
was just the one guy. There was the warlock-ish figure who seemed. You guys thought at first that they were controlling them. That may have partially been the case, but at least wasn't entirely true.
Okay,
Yeah,
that was yet another one shot that I'm recalling. I'm trying to.
like they were the handler, but they weren't the one who like kept them in the world.
That's what it seemed to be.
Okay.
They seemed to have some sort of magician that kept a leash on them, and when they were slain, their spirit persisted in the world, but far less controlled, just attacking whatever was nearest rather than, or whatever they could kill the easiest.
Sulveran slowly shifts his weight again, and then says, "In the end, you put them down."
A javelin through the heart, yes.
And he clearly has more on his mind. Like it is he is almost grimacing. He has his jaw set so tightly, but he is just going to sit back, and he is still staring at Will and Uba, but he's out of the conversation clearly for now.
Can I make an Arcana check about that resurrection? I don't know if I have done that at some point in the last 3
Will has not, I think, made a roll.
Well, this is going to be a 1. So
Or at least,
when my character opens,
I think you might have done it when Kalaka described it, but this is more detailed information. Okay. So typically, based off of what Medea has said about like the history of this figure, typically any such spell to bring a figure that's been dead for decades back to life would be incredibly powerful magic. Even I can't remember where you guys are at with spell slots, but even more powerful than certainly more powerful than what Baron is currently capable of. Especially to bring them back in their original form. Though, of course, it's possible that the figure was resurrected or brought back to life at some time closer to their death and has been lingering under the control of these people for a long time in some kind of undead state. You would suspect that there must be some kind of powerful soul-based magic at work here that's probably similar-ish to a resurrection spell, but not exactly the same. as it seems to put them under some kind of control of the caster that isn't typically incorporated into a normal resurrection. But since they were in the same form and everything, that's what it seems like to you. Especially since they had their same memories and everything. This wasn't at least you don't think, based off of the two different informations, it's not like a facsimile of this person, because you would suspect that there's some element of their soul that's being forced into this new body to do this whatever work or purpose to.
I think Will, kind of, while Madeira is talking, is scribbling some notes on some paper, and is leaning across to Cala to bounce ideas off her, and says, "Well, it's not weak magic that brings back these people. To revive someone with an element of their soul. Maybe they were revived or resurrected back when they died. But if not, they're just pulling people from history. Do you have to have a part of the person for that?" She kind of shrugs. So,
It's
also, normally with resurrection, you have to be willing.
well, from what we understand, this is Cala. What we understand from what you've said about Sulveran said, I suppose we don't know how this other person died, but Sulveran's friend killed by a demon. Perhaps there's some element to their death that is involved here. That would make it perhaps slightly more feasible or easier.
So,
There are the others, the ones that have been acting mad, like Pelagon.
well,
That may be a part of
all
it.
right. First things first, don't die against a demon soon. Because you
Is
might come
there
back
any-
1,000 years from now.
Is there a god that's the god of madness? Or one associated with it? Any of the dark gods?
So there, I will just make a history, definitely make a religion check, not a history check.
Okay.
Just so I know how detailed information. You'll get some information no matter what.
Jesus
This
Christ,
is
the two. So 13 total.
13. Okay. So there's the god Thel, who's not a dark god, is typically the patron of people with certain kinds of normal, benign, what we would say mental illnesses, stuff like that. People who don't see the world exactly how everybody else sees it for one reason or another. Genik, the god of fear, is often associated with a certain kind of madness in people or inflicting madness amongst individuals, and the more kind of I hate to use an outside property, but a Cthulhian sense of the word. There's probably an actual specific word I could use. I just doesn't come to mind at the moment. But that kind of more primordial sort of existential madness, typically associated with Shinnik of all the dark gods. That's the extent of your knowledge about that, and that's pretty much common knowledge for anybody trained in religion at all.
But I know if the dark gods tend to work together.
They do, although such alliances tend to be tenuous best. Historically, Saliel has been the most powerful of them, at least in recent history, because at least up until the Blight, they still had a physical presence on the world. So up until that point, they kind of had a greater dominion over all of the other dark gods because they were more able to easily affect the influence in the world. Since then, it's been a bit more back and forth, although Saliel still has that kind of is seen as top dog, I guess.
Mediose, this could be the work of multiple of the gods working together and induced madness upon revival, maybe. Some of the gods that Saliel works with certainly could induce such a state. Bringing somebody back unwillingly would likely be a divine work.
Well, reasonably, even if it's just Saliel taking a direct hand in things, that is far outside our capabilities to deal with. But if it's multiple of the dark gods, like Samilis wouldn't even step in to stop someone that was trying to rule the entire sea. Either way, like, we can sit and hypothesize about what these things mean, but we are about to go rescue someone that will have more knowledge than any of us, or perhaps all of us combined. That is kind of Toralis's whole thing.
That's true, although I worry what done to him be able to overcome that problem. And Will, you would also know this. I still think it's possible that somebody of, say, Sulveran's ability, given time, would enact such an effect. There's just so much that we don't know.
Sulveran, when he looks at Cala, is so deeply disturbed that he just kind of reaches out and he like takes back his coffee cup to just kind of, and he just is kind of holding it. Well, what they've done to Toralis, perhaps his strength is the problem. Ticks will take down even the mightiest of elk left unattended long enough.
I suspect that they would value keeping him intact or some date, and also for the same reason we would like to.
I think Will is looking at Sulveran with the face of like, wow. Like, that was insensitive. That was an insensitive thing to say, Sulveran.
No wisdom check needed for that.
We could head out sooner than later.
Well, on a philosophical level, we'll either get there in time or not get there in time. Those are the two options. So, who knows? Will doesn't have anything to do.
I
that
do.
This 2 week requires.
As much as Will jokey, I do think this means we should be extra careful about going down while doing battle with the extra dangerous of it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't meant. I genuinely meant don't die when you're fighting a demon. It wasn't a joke.
I know.
So, perhaps if we see somebody, those of us more likely to go down things that can prevent possession, it'd be good to bring with them. Perhaps we could find a charm that would help against that.
I know that some of you have such capability. It would be good to have those on ready.
I shall do so. And I don't think, like, we've had a little bit of the conversation off record, but this is definitely an in-character conversation that should happen. Sulveran is going to turn to Alveron and say, I know your wishes, should it come to death. But the rest of you, it is either a quick and utter end to prevent any sort of ill resurrection, or to be resurrected. Should anybody like to lodge their choice with me now?
He'll like
I'd
looks
prefer
at
resurrected.
everybody and is like, I don't want to die.
I would rather be resurrected than find an alpenstock through my own head.
Sulveran just nods like, this is a perfectly legitimate decision, Will, and turns to look at Medea.
I mean, I'm happy to be brought back from the dead. I have work to be done, and so long as I can, I will try to do it.
And indeed, if the same comes to me, I too have duties to perform.
Well, thankfully now I can bring you back, as far as I understand.
Well, if that is not an option, do not let them do to me what they have done to Kalasht.
All right.
Medea puts a hand over her
We'll
chest.
probably be fine though, right? Uba says this like strict cogent.
Statistically, probably. We haven't died yet after doing many things that should almost kill us, so that means it's likely that we will do more things that don't kill us.
I mean, I've got like a
I
castle
don't
now.
think that's how
I should.
statistics work.
Kingdom. I've got a.
Medea looks to Will with the eyes of like, I'm just trying to convince Upa that things will be fine.
Will is looking down at Cala, who is doing like simple arithmetic, and just says, "Don't write down that about statistics. That's not real." I was gonna say that Cala was doing maths already, but I like
They scratch out some numbers. All right. I think with that, I think that's at least the most important thing that you all break to go and continue, as we said last week. Many of you are training with Will, certainly. Killa and Cala are in there at various different times. So, Medea, getting back to the shopping question, because you didn't get a chance to do it. You asked about a potion of speed. Let me just check your thing, and I will tell you at a glance. You could not afford a potion of unless you borrowed some money or got incredibly.
So it's more than 3,000 gold pieces.
Yes.
They're so expensive.
Okay, I want to ask if there's a analogous potion that I had an idea for. Something like a potion of daylight, where the effect is when you coat your weapon in it, it has the properties of when you hit an enemy, it's as if they have been contacted by sunlight. Like something that would be made by like the Church of Parador. It wouldn't emit light in like a significant area, but it'd act like daylight when it hits something.
I think that's you might be able to find somebody to make something like that. I think that's something that's specific enough that it's probably not readily available on. I don't think anybody's making a potion that or like a daylight in a bottle type spell. It would be far easier to find a something that can cast daylight, although daylight.
So, would it be okay to ask if like I could have had that commissioned before we left?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think how useful that is, and if to try to think about the price. I'll say yes. I'm gonna say it will cost you. So you want something you can coat on a sword that will,
Or a weapon, yeah.
or a weapon that will essentially make it a sunbeam-ish. Not that it will do that damage, but it will essentially be
Yeah.
sunlight.
Yeah. So when something is hit by it, if it would be negatively affected by hitting by sunlight, it would be affected the same way by this. Like sunshine in a bottle.
Sounds like a job for Lumen Shadowbane.
You just bring Lumen. Oh. Who was like, I know somebody that like I feel
Make
like
a
would be
make a D100 roll. Sorry, I'm just quickly looking like at what level spell can you replicate the effects of sunlight. All
Dawn
those
is
spells
0.
have damage attached, bonus damage attached.
I think since Dawn is a 5th level spell and do it maybe around 4th level, like as if Dawn didn't create damage.
I'm just I'll think about this later because this is probably going to be too cheap. I'll say yes. It will be. It will cost you 5,000 gold for such a thing. I think it's impactful enough in some situations. Actually, let me backtrack. I don't think that's possible. I don't think it's possible to put just the effect of having sunlight onto a sword without it also creating light and doing other things. It would probably be easier to make a sword that shines like sunlight. And such a thing would cost 5,000 gold. I'm going to say.
Okay. If it is not feasible, then I just will not pursue it. I'll just grab some like mundane adventuring equipment, and otherwise I'm fine.
Sorry, it was just that's a very specific ask. I had to think about it for a good long second.
You're good, yeah.
Okay. Was there any other last minute shopping that anybody wanted?
I don't want to do shopping. I do want to
Yes.
explain everything to the Suthana and also petition if she's willing to give us anything from her royal armory or repository of scrolls that might be useful in such an endeavor that will, of course, reflect so well on the people of Tal'Anfagon.
Sure, you go and find them in their. I think you do this in like the ice chambers in their study, which is as when they require aid. Make a persuasion check. You'll get something no matter what. I'm just curious how well extols this.
I don't know why you did let these things
Right.
happen.
What you roll.
That's what.
Oh, okay. Wow.
33.
Sorry, I wasn't looking at Foundry.
I'm the Suthana now. We did it. I retire Will and I play the Suthana.
Here's my crown. Here you go.
Actually, I'll come with you. That sounds like a great idea.
Yes. Here, you can have my army. They'll say, well, of course, I would be more than happy to aid you in such an important endeavor, as you, of course, have aided me in such endeavors that I have asked you with. What kind of things would you be looking for? I'm at your disposal.
Well, as you know, I have a propensity for using scrolls in combat and out of combat. So any interesting scrolls that you have on hand, I would be greatly appreciative of. But also, if you have any powerful magical items that we could potentially borrow for the next leg of our journey. And I'm trying to remember the items that we didn't take.
You didn't take the sword.
She's wearing the sword,
which,
so obviously not that.
I mean, with a 20, you probably could take it, but I don't know who would use
Will's
it.
not willing to do it. Like, Will's not willing to ask
to even ask for it. Okay.
But there was something of Niniel's we didn't take as well, the bow.
I don't think you took the quiver or arrows, which are
Would she happen to just have a
good
stun sword in her armory, man?
That's just a rare
She might
item,
have a
isn't it?
blade.
A sun spear?
A sun spear. Rare item. You're not there, so if Will goes back, would you ask the party about? Basically, I'll say what she says is, I'm at my disposal if you want to ask your companions about items that they might wish for. Of course, I have scrolls that you can take. If you want the Niniel's quiver and arrows, I trust you to bring them back, so I will say that you may take them if you wish to use this adventure. They are quite powerful, probably. In the hands of a capable archer, perhaps one of the most powerful magic items you could wish for.
Will nods and says, I do think that the I'll find the voice from the Sutana's voice to Anya's voice to Will's voice. I do think that the arrows and the quiver and bow would be useful. I know that Alveron and Uba both have a potential to shoot things from a distance, and that would help with that. But I can go and ask the others if there's anything in particular they're looking for.
Of course, just come and find me or one of my servants. I will let them aid you in this. As far as scrolls are concerned, we do have a selection. You have taken some of the ones that had available previously, but we still have a fairly wide availability. Out of game, I will say, to make this easy, you can take or choose to take I'm going to say roll to 20. I will say you can take 1 8th level, 2 7th level, or lesser scrolls. If you want to choose lesser scrolls, you take more. You have first, second, third, however many you want. Basically, those are easy to find. Anything higher than that is where it's just limited in availability. So you can take a second
to randomize what the 8th and 7th ones are.
I'm fine with you choosing if you would like to.
All right.
Like, they're not going to give you every single spell scroll that they have, even with the nat 20, because those are really rare and useful. But and you don't have to make that decision now. I will say just before at least next session, make sure you have those picked up. I don't think it's going to come up.
That's all right. I think I know what I will take. I'll take the 8th level one. I'm going to take Dominate Monster.
Okay.
And instead of the 7th level ones, I will take 2 5th level ones, if that's fine, and take Rary's Telepathic Bond and Hold Monster.
That works.
And then that means that I don't have to think about it anymore. Yeah, I'll go back and be like, oh, the Sultana is willing to give us any aid that we need from the armory. if anyone has something in particular they'd like me to ask for.
And just so we're all aware, apart from usable items, even with the nat 20, these are on loan. They're not necessarily just straight up giving these.
Yes. And if you lose them, you'll obviously be responsible for their return or equal value to the people of Tal'Anfagon. I look at Uber.
Andrew, this is me
I'll
riffing off
bring them
fantasy
back.
trips. Do like sunlight javelins exist in this world?
Like a javelin that turns into pure sunlight.
Yeah.
Yes, I will say that they do. Given certain things about the Guthanate, I will say that they have some, if you would like. They do not work like javelins of lightning, because I don't like the way they are used up upon being thrown. I will think about the details, but it will be at least as good as a Sunblade, and you can have 3 of them.
Okay. Used up means like they're like completely gone on use, or like as
You
in like
throw them, they hit the target, and the magic is expended at that point.
Okay.
I will probably let Marisa circle back to this again,
Sure.
because I think it probably won't come up. And I don't. But from such things, although if they get the quiver and bow, then the quiver and arrows, then
I think Will's intention is to give them to Alveron.
okay, that's fine.
Because Alveron was saying needing a more magic-y bow situation.
Okay. Just so you know, you don't have to attune to the arrows, but you do have to attune to the quiver, if that factors into your attunement slot choices. I think I described them at one point, but I'll do it again real quick. So the quiver basically is linked to the arrows in such a way that you fire the arrow and they return to the quiver. You don't have to worry about retrieving arrows. Not that I really do that. The arrows are +2. And they do an extra d6 of force damage. And that happens basically when they return to the quiver, they unleash a blast of force damage. Zip back to your.
Would that stack with other magical effects on arrows?
No, that's a particular feature that's part of the arrows.
Gotcha.
So the quiver. No. Okay. Sorry, I just want to double check. Yes, and that is something you can only do with the arrows. They're bonded together. They're almost one item, but they're technically separate because you can. Because the other aspect of the quiver is that you can make an additional ranged attack as a bonus action, and that can be done with technically any arrow. It doesn't have to be one of many.
It's a bonus action. Okay.
Yeah. So for Alveron, those are particularly good since you don't have a lot of ways of getting extra attacks.
Yeah. Andrew, I forgot that I'm multi-classed and thusly have an extra pool of spell scrolls to look at. I'm not taking Telepathic Bond. I'm going to take a different 7th level scroll, and I'm just going to roll straight away to see if it works.
Okay. What is it?
Because
now I'm curious.
Simulacrum.
Yeah.
If they have one, I feel like that is
That's a 7th level?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what. You can roll me another d20, and I'll give you 50-50 odds.
Wait, is high my 50? Also, can I roll a d2?
No, I want it to be a d20. You want high. High is better. Low is bad. Okay. Yeah, they do have a simulacrum scroll. You can use
That also would have cost Simulacrum like fun. All right, I'm gonna roll it straight away. It's just it's a wizard spell, so it's an int one.
Yes.
You could probably get somebody to cast Enhance Ability on you before you try and do this.
I trust my own ability enough. Yeah, so I think Will spends like simulacrum takes forever to cast, right?
12 hours.
12
yeah,
hours.
You takes you basically a full day.
Yeah.
But doesn't include sleeping time.
Yeah, I think one of the days Will just like says no classes today to Cala and like leaves Cala in Cala's hands, and then comes out when everybody's eating later, and there's just two Wills, and they're each holding one end of the magic rod. And Will says, "All right, and if things get really bad," and one Will points to the other Will, "we can get some backup." The second one says.
I look at Cala and just go, "Did you wish really hard?"
I don't
Or-
have.
For this? No.
The real Will suggests Alveron shuts up.
Like, does the spell suggestion?
Yes. Yeah, I will leave Simulacrum Will around A to do some.
I suppose we have a backup.
So this version
Yes.
of Will can now do research if we find anything along the way.
Okay. So you're going to leave
also,
them at Melf's Tower.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, but also I can sending to them to get them to teleport to the other end of the wand, or we can teleport back to them. The rod.
Right.
The wall thing.
You've got some, like, an emergency backup or...
Yeah.
Okay.
I will make a note of that somewhere. I don't think I'll forget.
It's hard to forget two Wills. There's definitely a moment where Uba walks up and I think is like, pokes both of you.
Should remember how Simulacrum.
How do we know which one's real?
Right. They're both real, Uba.
Can you do that for me? I might have to, but...
I think if you find me a scroll, I can do it for you.
Good to know.
After be touching you for 12 hours, it's easier to do to yourself.
No.
Phrasing.
I thought I'd
I'll
ask you to
think
shut up, Alveron.
Think about it. That was
Just
Sean.
pouring whatever the equivalent of Bailey's is into a coffee. It's just Bailey's.
All right. I think with that, unless somebody wants to interrupt me,
Can I
somebody
ask
interrupts me.
the
Yes, go ahead.
consumable items? Do we have to pay if they're used up?
Depends on what it is.
Yeah, Will ask if the if we use all the sun javelins, is that fine?
You may use the sorry. You may use the sun.
The Suthana does not approve of us using the sun javelins. There was a dog barking. It was very.
And Suthana reveals that her polymorph spell that turns her from a dog into a person ran off mid-conversation.
The Suthana is just a dog. But yeah, I think Will explains it. Anything consumable, the understanding is we will use them.
Okay.
Are you sure you don't need anything else?
The Suthana.
Sulveran?
Sulveran just looks down at himself, looks at his alpenstock and his armor and says, "I have received the armor already. I cannot make use of these scrolls of yours. As ever, I would..."
Absolutely, you can use scrolls. You just use. I think Will's had this conversation before, and I'm like, you've used a scroll of sending to me before.
And Sulveran just stares Will down, and then sighs and says, "Let me put that better. You..." Hold on, there's noises.
The dog that had played the Suthana is now in Sulveran's room.
Yeah, pretty much. When Andrew's dog went off, like I thought it was my dog, and reflexively flicked back my mic so I wouldn't be burdening y'all. I imagine that you have already gotten the scrolls that are of use.
Sure, for me, I can't speak to gods as well. I can, but not in the same way. Maybe I should learn to be a cleric. Then I can use more scrolls.
Before we go anywhere, I do want to check. I need to get rid of an attunement slot in order to do the quiver. So would anyone here benefit from the Cloak of Elvenkind?
Do you have its stats anywhere?
Just the cloak of,
I
it's the advantage on stealth. I
Yeah,
believe.
and wisdom checks to see you have disadvantage.
Um,
So I think that's mostly if you happen to have a free slot.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't
If
have a
it's
free
not
sheet.
free slotted, it'd be useful, but
Yeah, it's just more useful to me at this point to have the
Uh,
quiver than it would be to have this.
I mean, Sulveran, there's no reason for you not to take it.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Is that I've and not failing stealth checks is always nice.
Okay.
I can direct
Andrew,
that.
do you have the ability to? All right, cool. And then, are you able to drop the quiver onto mine, or?
Probably doesn't exist in.
I did not make it in here
We
because
didn't take it.
you didn't.
When
I
we
thought
had the
that you
option to
weren't.
take it.
Yeah, you didn't take it when I gave you the option. So, but I'll give it to you.
We have the bow and quiver, right? But only the quiver requires attunement. Did you say?
You have the quiver and
Yeah,
the
yeah.
arrows. The bow, although you know it exists, was not there.
Okay, I thought that it's the bow as well.
is it fine too if I spend my money in the background on just mundane adventuring equipment like
Yeah,
holy
if you
water,
want to buy
fire?
whatever you want to buy, we don't have to go through that. It's easy to find
Yeah.
in Tal'Anfagon.
I'm also going to ask if we can teleport to Kharad. It's Kharad, right? Oh, Galmador. Which one?
You could teleport to Kharad. They don't have a direct teleport to Galmador from here, or at least the Sudana does, because they don't. Just a
They normally travel by cannon through the roof.
Normally, they just never need to go to Galmador.
Nobody
since
wants to
it's-
go to Galmador. Okay, yeah,
it's not the capital, and the Sudana. It's expensive to set, even for a king. It's expensive to teleport.
It is prohibitively expensive. Okay, I'll go to. Yeah, I'll get us teleported to Kharad.
We will fast forward then to the day that you are getting ready to leave. Everybody has packed their various things. You have the gifts that the Sudana given to you for the game. And everybody looks very different. Let me just get like a quick once over because we haven't had like updated descriptions in a while of some of the people. I want to start with Alveron. Alveron, you've got completely different equipment since we started, and you've also made some extreme style changes. What do you look like as you're standing on this teleportation circle, getting ready to go?
So Alveron is freshly, pretty much completely shaven from the neck up at this point, where before he had the long sailor's hair and maybe a little bit of permanent 5 o'clock shadow. Now it is fully bare going up. It's definitely taken a few years off how he looks in some ways, but it's also given more of a strange quality to his appearance. Probably don't have SPF in this world, so a lot of cure light wounds are probably cast on his sunburn on the dome of his head at this point. Only in downtime, though. We wouldn't want to waste that resource of the group.
None of our healers are going to waste a spell on your sunburn. Have you met
if
it?
it's- But what if
Does
it's
greater
really
restoration
owie,
reverse
Will?
baldness? Is baldness a serious illness?
I think that now's the worst time to be discussing whether that's the case.
I was about to say, very
But,
topical, but
I like the idea that Sulveran just slaps Alveron on the head.
No, I will say that Sulveran would in fact cast Cure Light Wounds if he was in danger of sun poisoning. But right after that, he would slap a hat on your head.
Very fair.
Alveron has like one of the bucket hats. Now.
I don't know why, but I was picturing one of those like old lady at the farmers markets, like straw sun hats, you know?
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Yeah.
and Uba has been telling me about how dangerous the flies are where we're going. So I've got like the things that hang down from the sides to keep flies out of your face.
Yeah.
I look like an old man. Somebody's
No,
dad
that-
over here.
Yes.
He is also wearing shorts that are a little bit too short and sandals with white socks.
No.
No, obviously. So the bald look, and then that old studded leather has been swapped out for the Sea King's armor that has the look almost of patchwork, pieces of coral and rock and bits of shell. There are minute differences in the armor day to day, maybe just slight color variation in some places, but it is always a complete set on him. And the kind of hole in the breastplate where the orb goes seems to grow shallower or deeper as the day goes on. Yeah. Oh, and I guess newly found with a much shinier and more polished short bow on his back and a very well stuffed quiver.
Yeah, I'll just re-describe the quiver. It is a the bulk of it is fashioned out of a dark red wood, and it's worked with silver all along the edges and some of the banding to reinforce it slightly. And it has arcane markings engraved in silver. It's kind of slightly swept as well, almost like a very long, like like a horn, like a beer stein or something like that. It's kind of got that kind of shape to it. And of course, in the arrows are made out of the same dark red wood. They are fletched with hippogriff feathers, and they're they have carvings all over them, arcane etchings. So much so that like if you're holding them, it's like they're completely textured, but they're fine enough that you couldn't notice that unless you were holding them. Basically, that's how like delicate are these. Will, what is your current?
I think because for Will it's been such a gradual like, hey, time has passed thing. It's not until that day when like she's completely ready to adventure again that it's obvious the changes that have happened. She's been like tucking her hair as it gets longer and longer, just further into her collar. But when she comes out to actually leave, she's got her hair in like a high ponytail that's actually long enough to work now. Her red coat has been left with the simulacrum, and she is wearing a black coat. It's probably the actual coat is as nice as the red one, but the buttons on it are luminescent as if like to represent the moon. And she's had them made so that the buttons are like a full moon at the collar, all the way down to a I don't remember what the word is for no moon for some reason. I'm not even going to consider why a new moon at the bottom. So there's like it's black buttons all the way up to a full moon. She has her familiar out of its pocket dimension and like sitting in her collar. But this time she does have weapons attached to her, mainly to give to Cala. But she has a hand crossbow that's like hanging outside of her cloak. And her big feathery cloak of the owl is on display.
Medea.
I think Medea has changed their look pretty significantly. I don't think I've described it before, or maybe I have, but their plate is glamored, so when they're not directly in battle now, and even in battle a lot of the time, it just looks like a massive greatcoat, made of this extremely thick leather that seems to cover them and trail behind them. And then sticking out of the coat, it almost looks like pauldrons as the metal of it seems to jut outwards. They always
It's
carry
a Warhammer 40k cloak, or coat, rather.
Yeah. And then they have what looks to be usually whenever they're heading out somewhere near water, they have this it would be pulled down now, but like trailing behind the cloak above the trim, a black hood seems to fall back. They always wear these massive leather gloves and just giant black boots that seem to add like 2 or 3 inches of height so that they seem more imposing in battle now. They wear rings adorning their hands, and their hair is probably much more well kept now. They've spent the money to like get very fine combs and hair ties to keep it all in order now in the mornings. They have a quiver with their javelins all jutting out and the spear in the background. Their shield is always at their side, ready to be grabbed just in case a battle starts.
Sulveran.
So Sulveran, like Alveron, has changed his armor. Now the only parts of bone that he wears are the ocarina, still at his roughly at his sternum, and the bones still hanging from his ears. The rest of him is clad in that gleaming mithril armor that they achieved at the Tal'Anfagon. He carries an alpenstock that is subtly different from his own, where his own had been a tool passed down over generations of the bird speakers of his tribe. The new one is a much more of a warrior's bent, what Kalash had once carried, and it's actually larger on him than his previous one had been because it had been cut for helping somebody who was significantly taller than him to make their way through icy, treacherous pathways. And his mohawk, like Will, his hair has been growing out, and while he's kept the sides of his scalp and his jaw clean shaven, his mohawk, a startling white, is now coming down low enough to probably hit the lines of the cloak of elven kind, which I'll let Andrew describe, and the scarf that Medea fashioned for him. That's always, even when it's probably a little out of season, he's still wearing it, and he's prone to often lifting that scarf up above his head in even the slightest extremes of sun. He will just automatically bring that scarf up. He also wields a shield of Mordain that just sits across his back.
The Cloak of Elvenkind is very kind of classical looking, so it's when you're looking at it and the hood's not up, it's mostly green, kind of worked with intricate elven design.
Dogs are a menace tonight. Mine was under the shelf, growling and snapping.
That's the one thing I don't like about this new spot is this is where usually he hangs out. He's got toys. Just slammed into the table. Yeah, so it's very classical. It's worked in silver and everything like that.
Had a bone ocarina.
Yes. I thought I
Will
mentioned that
asks you-
one.
Yeah, probably. Will asks you to teach her how to play it. Since she has acquired an ocarina.
Yes. I think
Bone Macarena. Sorry.
Sulveran will indeed do so.
Sorry, it's because he got worked up because some random guy knocked on our door, thinking it was a different apartment, even though we have the apartment numbers literally next to the door. He was like, "Is this 3102?" No, man, it's not. Doing some work on, I guess, their apartment. Anyways, it would be the cloak would be too short for Sulveran, but of course, being magic, it has kind of sized itself more appropriately to you. So instead of where when you first put it on, it's probably like getting down just below the butt cheeks, but it extends to be appropriately like more around the calf length that a cloak should be at. I think I'll just wait for Marisa to get here, and we'll have a cut to Uba at some point with some description. Ramona, what were you going to say?
I had a question, and then you said I'm going to cut to Uba, and my mind just completely blanked, and I have no idea why. There was like words in there going on.
Hey, it happens. You'll remember in a second. Sure.
Yeah.
So you all gather. Cala is also there. Cala's hair has not really changed very much. They've been in the city much more, so they've been getting pretty regular haircuts. They have it parted down the middle, and it's right around a little bit past the chin. It's kind of raven black that has a bit of a luster to it. They had been taken to wearing dresses around Tal'Anfagon that were split skirt style, a little bit shorter, not full kind of thing, and more of the local style, the Elkhorn style, so a lot flowy. For this, they have switched back into the garb that you first met them in, this sort of almost military style buttoned tunic with these dark colored paint. They've got their rapier strapped to their sword. They also have their spell book with many newly added spells from all of their studying with them. Determination their face. I think I've described Cala before in terms of like physicality, but I'll do it again just in case. Cala is a little bit on the probably average height for a woman, but to all of you, since most of the party is pretty tall, except for Medea, is a little bit on the shorter side. So they're taller than Medea, but shorter than everybody else except for Uba. And they're pretty like thin. Most people would probably say delicate, although you all know that certainly can hold their own. They don't have the best. They're not that strong or the most. But they make up for that with their dexterity. Ella, of course, is also standing next to Will, dressed in a similar style to Will. I think they've taken to kind of, they probably have a coat that's not the same, but reminiscent of yours. It's not all decked out in silk, but it's like a very similar cut to them. And they've got very, fairly good for the road pants tunic that's a little bit more similar to Cala. Undergarment. So all of you have assembled here. Of course, Uba and Kojin are there.
Before they get back, can
yes.
Okay, I remember my question. This was sort of brought up because I want this would be part of Medea's equipment. Over the next few weeks, has Medea mastered Weaver's tools over this time?
You are proficient. I won't say mastered, but yeah, you are okay with Weaver's tools.
Then among all this, like this giant coat and obviously this like undershirt and armor and spears, there's also just what looks to be like a delicate little sewing kit at their waist with all the little needles and thread.
Okay. I gotta have
good.
that.
They can make Alveron a hat.
Yeah, that's what Medea's currently working on. They've got like crochet tools out and like this armor and decked out in weapons.
Like a half beanie.
Yeah. Also, they've just got a big leather hat. I almost forgot that. Just for the sun.
But no mask.
No mask. No.
Moved past that. So the attendant at the teleportation circle, the Suthana is there with Tithias, some of the other courtiers who you busy, but they're here to see you off this teleportation circle. Her parting words. I know that this is a task which you have had since before we met. I wish you all the luck that I can. I hope that my tokens be enough to make a difference in this mission of yours. That you can bring the sage. If you are able to, lead and message me. Try my best to give you what aid I can. Situation. So I know, or you know, it may not be possible due to it. But the kingdom of the Elkar is behind you.
Will nods, and but it's probably also spoken to the Sudana about like that. Will's simulacrum will remain in her service as much as she needs. Like, so if she does need anything, she can communicate that to us through. There's like a lot of ways for that to work,
Yeah.
and Will's like, Will has also said, also if I die, I think the simulacrum will continue to live until it dies. So I can continue my service.
There's like a
What a
small,
tragic existence if the real Will dies and the
By the way.
simulacrum has to continue.
a functionally worse version of yourself is the one that
One
Right.
that can never regain spell slots.
Yeah, or learn.
To be
That
fair,
would be fun.
a
maybe,
level 9
eventually.
bard simulacrum's pretty good.
I
Right.
want to play that character now, like the high level caster who made a simulacrum and then died, but the simulacrum lived on.
Nice.
Pretty fun. It has
Um,
half hit points, that's the other thing.
Yeah.
The Suthana said this to all of us, right?
Yeah, this is like as you're leaving, they're kind of like, rally the troops type speech.
I think in that case, Sulveran, who has by this point properly gotten the hang of the Elkar court bow, does so and deeply, and says, and I and my tribe are honored to have you as an ally.
She will return the bow at an appropriately smaller incline, given their.
I like that the cloak also gives Silver an advantage on that bow.
He does not fall over.
With that, the wizard attendant will nod to Susanna and slowly begin waving their hands as the teleportation circle under you begins to light up one symbol at a time till the circle is complete. You all feel yourselves for only for most of you, only like the third time at most, third or fourth, this sensation of light suddenly rushing forward into your eyes as color moves into you for a moment. After several heartbeats, you kind of are suddenly in a different spot and you blink and reorient yourself to your new location. To some of you, this is a more familiar sense and feeling than most. There's just something about the air that immediately, as you hits your nose, you know you're underground. Um, and you can see a wharf attendant standing in the corner of this room. There's a couple of guards here and there. Dwarf looks at you and he says, "Well, welcome to Kharad. This is your first time in the city."
Oh no, we've all been to Kharad before.
Well, the Sultana had contacted us ahead of time. If you need anything, let me know. I will make arrangements in or tavern in the town. Otherwise, you're free to go about your business.
Will smiled and says, "We probably should just start heading to Galmador as quickly as possible."
You want to take the road south. You're looking for mounts. I can scrounge some up.
Do you do teleportation from here to there?
We do have another circle for that. If you like, it'll be a little bit expensive, or I could contact the Sultana.
Oh no need to bother her. That's fine. How much will it be to get to Galmador for all of us?
Same price, no matter what you're moving. You could actually take a couple more if you like, but we charge a service of 5,000 gold pieces.
I'm willing to pay my portion.
I have 3,000 gold to spare.
Yeah, I can throw my share at that.
Will collects all the money that people are willing to give, in the hopes as to not have to pay her or Cala.
I'll throw a grand and a half at it.
Yeah.
Throw another grand and a half at it as well.
And then as Will walks to Sulveran, Will's like, "Oh, already only need 2,000 more."
Does Will say that out loud? Because Sulveran will just, Sulveran just takes one look at Uba and then just hands the 2,000 over.
Uba's like looking vaguely in the direction of their coin purse, but waiting to see what everybody else is doing.
I know Marisa isn't here, but I feel like Will and Uba share like a look at the fact that they both got out of paying, and then Will pay the attendant. All right.
Or
To
they
be
will
fair,
leave,
Uba fronted
say
the
we
gold
can-
for a very expensive thing not that long ago.
Yeah. When they say they could bring more people, Medea asks for 10 minutes and will summon their steed, which is same giant stag at this point.
Let me double check that. I think that's right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
We invite
6,
the bartender.
7, 8. Yeah.
Grab an urchin. It's like, "Hey kid, want to go on an adventure?"
I think you're stepping on my territory of how I recruit people.
It's true.
They're like, "Do I?" You find a like little kobold urchin. No, yeah, you can summon the steed real quick, and I believe it's 10 creatures. I'm not going to double check that, but you should.
It's just however many fits in the space, right?
No, there's a
No, it has a
creature
particular amount.
limit. I believe it's 10. I'm positive, and I don't really care to double check at this point. So, you teleport once more. Oh, maybe it is only.
It depends. If they're casting teleport, that's how it works. If they're casting teleportation circle, which would make more sense, it basically for a round creates a portal that you walk through.
Oh, that's right. I always forget about that.
Because they both use circle.
But yeah, you could either way. You could. You once more with the same kind of sensation, and doing 2 teleports right away in a row as the light once again flashes into your eyes is slightly even more disorienting as you shake your heads, finding yourself It's also strange because you blink, you know you've moved, but the room that you've teleported to, as opposed to the difference between the room in Tal'Anfagon and the room in Kharad, is almost exactly the same. The room in Kharad as Galmador. It's just a different attendant, and there's like obviously differently outfitted guards. But almost everything about the room is the same. There's like holes that are clearly meant to like shoot down in case somebody who isn't supposed to be teleporting into here teleports into here. And stuff like that. Like the architecture is so similar that like you have to think about whether or not you've been teleported. A gnomish attendant looks at you and says, "Hello, welcome to Galmador. The attendant at Kharad said this was a bit of a last minute thing. You haven't been in the city before. I will have somebody escort you out. But don't make trouble and go about your business."
Character, why do I have such a vivid memory of a gnomish attendant at the teleportation circle in Galmador? This feels weird.
Because there was, I didn't go back
It's not
and
this
check.
one though.
No, it's a different person.
Okay.
There was
That one was
a
the worst.
male gnomish attendant in Galmador the last time you went to, and he was a bit of a fuck.
Okay. That makes sense. I was
He
like,
had more
why
of a
do I
voice.
hate this gnomish attendant?
He had a bit of like a glasses push-up thing, and he was kind of annoying.
And he thought he was better than Elsa, which was like
Yes.
the worst thing that you
Yes,
could
yes.
do. All right, thank you very much. Will, I think, has spoken to Cala, and Cala said that she knew someone in the city that could help get us to the...
Yeah. Hell will actually look at you and says, I've been here a couple times, although not in this room before. But we'll be okay. You all kind of exit and find yourself kind of in the middle of a keep. And as you walk out, you are underground, but there is... I'm just assuming you did this around noon. Tal'Anfagon, so it's around noonish here. There is like a beam of light, just one like light beam that filters down, and you can see there's as you're getting out into the open space, there's these mirrors that are like huge mirrors placed around the inside of this like you're in like the caldera, or what feels like the caldera of a dormant volcano. And all around the rims of this are giant mirrors that seem to be placed to help catch the light and reflect it around. So it feels almost like daytime here, even though you can look up and see that there's only one large hole to see the sky out of, way up above you. You're in a very military style keep. It's you all would probably know that this or just based off of intuition, this is the seat of government here. There's dwarven soldiers clad in plate and mail, with pole arms, swords, axes, all kinds of different weapons. Some milling about, some training. Also scribes and clerics of different kind, moving about, moving through this space. Got a very different feel to it than Tal'Anfagon, which you've stayed in for so long. There's a bit more rigidity to everything. The dwarves don't chat quite as much. Cala will lead you out.
I think while we're like walking out, Will is giving Kella a history lesson about Galmador, and it kind of expands to be telling everybody the history of Galmador, because of the nature of Will's performative like shift. She's trying to get more into being a performer, and it's like, all right, I'm gonna tell Kella the story of the ripping off of the top of this mountain that I remember from when I was 6 and a drunk told me.
Does Jack want to give us a summary of the story?
I don't remember it well enough, I think.
Okay.
If you send me a Cliff Note version, I'll improvise a story for a bit.
It was the giant dragon Saliel summoned stormed out of here.
I'll
The great
send you
shadow
the
dragon.
wiki.
Oh yeah, that I don't have access to that thing, so absolutely that's not going to be useful. But yeah, I think Will knows the story far better than Jack does. But my recollection was that a demon ripped the ceiling off.
Yes, I'll recap it real quick. So Will quickly imparts to you. Make a performance check. Why not? Yeah, it's an excellent story. It's very riveting. Some of you, like, this percolates the back of your brain, like Medea probably already knows the majority of the story. Uba is like, oh, interesting. But you're all pretty rapt as Will relates to the story of how during the Blight, this is kind of one of the areas where the demons initially emerged out of. And in particular, the great shadow dragon, Orca Shy, came up through Galmador and just tore the top of the mountain off, clamber out of it before descending upon the Romanian Empire. And so this used to be just a hollowed out mountain with a normal cap, and now it has this giant hole at the top where this light trickles down. And obviously that was a terrible thing, but there was some interesting after effects will explain. Like this is one of the few places where they can farm like normal-ish crops in the dwarven underground. Most other places, or for the most part, the dwarves get their food either from the Romanian Empire or some farmlands in the valleys of the mountain. The Gathite people don't really venture down that far. So there's that kind of interesting after effect. But the legacy of that is also that this is one of the areas with the most activity, even up to today, which kind of segues nicely for Cala, as she says, as you wrap through this story. You've moved out of this castle, basically what it is, this fort, and into the city. It's not nearly as large as Kharad or Tal'Anfagon. It's much smaller, much like a large town or like a large city. But it is heavily walled right around here. And there are pretty tall buildings. One of the other interesting things that you will note, or some of you will note as you're walking through, is that mithril armor and arms are not really common. It's not like everybody has a sword here, but significantly more common than probably any other place in Imris because the mithril might be by. So as you're walking by, you see a dwarf who's got like a mithril breastplate, like just kind of walking around. And normally people would kind of stop to glance at that just because it's interesting. You don't see that a lot, but nobody seems to really notice here except for you guys or pick up on that. And it's a quick way you realize pretty soon to pick up on who is from the city and who's not, and whether or not they kind of stop to oogle and ogle at the amount of mithril arms goods are.
I assume Uba is thoroughly oogling things.
Uba's like,
Oh, I was.
Shiny. And Kojin is looking appreciatively as you are walking by. Cala will say, so the person that I know, he lives on the edge of town, or at least I think he's still there. His name's Bartram, although most people call him Old Bart. He's more of a friend of Toralis's mine. I've only met him a couple times. Earlier on in my apprenticeship, we came down. Toralis wanted to talk to him. He's sort of the expert on the demons, the underground tunnels in the area. He's a human though. I think he's from Roms, so I didn't really ask him. But he's a demon hunter. Anybody who wants to can make me a history. think this is
Religion
or history.
I actually had rolled about this previously. There's the Imglad Demon Hunters, right?
No, the Imglad are specifically not demon hunters in the
Okay.
in a official sense, because demon hunter is a very specific kind of thing. Okay. So Will, Alveron, and Sulveran, you all you've heard of demon hunters. They're people who hunt demons, but you don't really know that much about them, what makes them different from just you guys who have killed demons before. You just know that they're an order who's kind of more dedicated specifically to hunting down. Medea, you know specifically that the demon hunters were, in the grand scheme of things, it's a relatively new thing, kind of coming around during the Blight. It's an order of, at first it was mostly people displaced by the Blight coming to combat the demon. But it kind of evolved very quickly into this sort of semi-knighthood martial, some people would say cult, in the sort of not a negative term, but sort of this insular organization thing. But they are not afraid to use what other people would kind of describe as less savory tactics, things like blood magic is not above things that they're willing to use, which there's not necessarily anything inherently wrong with blood magic, but a lot of people do it unfavorably because using other people's blood obviously is pretty bad.
The only thing that's off limits is getting innocents hurt, basically. If it's
Right.
your risk, fine to take.
Yeah, demon hunters, they'll use their own blood to fuel magic. They're not afraid of using potions, which most people would not drink, because it has some permanent effects on your body. They're not afraid of using intentionally using certain curses, like lycanthropy of different kinds, to their advantage in fights. They basically they're not knights. They don't have a code of honor. Their thing is, we protect people from demons, and we will do what we have to do to accomplish that goal. Is kind of their thing.
Mm-hmm.
And Medea can relate that to the party.
Yeah, they'll say. I think they would say this before they got there. They'd relate to the demon hunters can be an odd folk. They're almost entirely honest spare on their desire to protect innocence. It's just that the nature of fighting demons, they tend to use more unconventional tactics. They'll use whatever resources they have available. There's usually strict rules about not using others' blood who don't want them to, but they do use blood in their magic. They'll take up any tactic it takes to destroy the demons in their home.
Sounds like a good ally.
Just really sounds like the way that you should approach things. Use whatever you can.
I've never met one directly, but I've read quite a bit about them in my study. Even some I understand across the continent, but this is a place where there's a great concentration of them.
You also know that they're a bit of a dying breed. They're not as common as they used to be, because the demons, especially in the last 200-ish years, haven't been quite, even though you've countered a lot recently. That's unusual. These days, most people in Imris can go their whole lives without encountering a demon. 600 years ago or 700 years ago, that was not the case. So they're a lot less common, which is probably why most of you don't know it, given the learned.
Can I roll an Arcana check to know about the benefits of using blood within magics?
Yeah.
And how that could be interpreted into bardic or wizard magics, potentially? 19.
So the thing about blood magic that you would know is that generally it lets a less adept caster cast more powerful spells, or specific spells that they might not be able to to do otherwise, but it's at the expense of one's own kind of life force. When they say blood magic, it's literal. They're using their own blood. Different ways to deal with this fact.
Could this is off the top of my head, but could Will start formulating a first level spell that infuses, like, the spell requires you to then cast a spell with the same action from a scroll, but you get a bonus equal to damage you're willing to take?
You kind of think about that.
There's already a UA feat for that, I think.
There might be. I'll look into it. With a 19,
It takes Will ages to formulate a spell. So.
Yeah, with a 19, you start to think about it, but it doesn't. You're like, you'll have to talk to this old Bart, so maybe get some more insight to figure out how that works, how that might. But it's certainly possible. You know about this.
This is genius.
There aren't that Hello, everybody, again. Welcome back. Shadows, Chapter 3, Session 1. Marisa has rejoined us. Say hello, Marisa.
Hello.
I'm going to put you in the
You
spot.
need to leave a pause for that.
As you guys are, so you've made your way through. Actually, Marisa, were you able to listen? I don't know how caught up you are.
I was able to listen to everything except like the last half hour.
Okay, so they teleported to Kharad, and then paid to teleport to Galmador, bypassing a significant portion of travel through connections and money. So that you guys, actually, I should maybe move you.
But not money that Uber had to spend. Will initially go through free.
I think Galmador. This will take a second, but
We get to hear about Uba's new fit.
people, I'll do it for this.
Charlie, I like that even though you're not cool, you tried to be cool. I like that about you.
That what
Riley,
did you like?
about
That
you
even though
specifically?
you're not cool, you tried to be cool.
What was that about my high charisma score?
You can be charismatic and not cool.
For the stream, I know you guys are still lying. This is Galmador right here. It's in the Great Khor Mountains, a little bit south of Kharad, which is where we start. Southwest. Relatively central still. It is a city within the mountain. This particular mountain had its cap ripped off by a enormous shadow dragon a long time ago. There's a little bit of sunlight still here, even very far. As you guys are walking and exiting the gates to go to Old Bart's, this, that Cala knows. Since everybody else described themselves, Marisa, right? Uba.
Sure. So I think Uba ultimately hasn't changed that much during the course of their journey, except they have some fancier studded leather armor, even though they're still very squishy. They're slightly less squishy than they were when we started. They also have a lot more random trinkets hanging around their neck, some gems, some jewels. They had a demon tooth for a while, things like that. So they're just kind of basically exactly the same with slightly upgraded armor. Kojin, I would say at this point, because it's been, I think it's been a while since we've had Kojin, so I'll say Kojin is significantly bigger and is probably the size almost as tall as Uba at this point. Uba is like 2.5 feet tall, so I think
it's
Kojin would probably be
been,
around the same.
At this point, month and a half-ish,
Okay.
maybe.
Yeah, so she's starting to get bigger, still smaller than Uba, but it's like the equivalent of someone that has like a Great Dane and they're a bit short. And Kojin is a red drake. I don't think she's probably has some jewels and gems hanging on her neck too, because Uba would probably have decided to deck her out.
They kind of plot a lot.
She's wearing a coat because Uber's that kind of pet owner.
A little sweater.
It might be cold. She's from the desert.
Honestly, I'm that type of pet parent, so like it's on brand to have Uba be that type of pet parent. But I think that's pretty much it for Kojin. They just have some small trinkets hanging from their neck to match Uba, but yeah, they're a little red drake.
So you guys, as you exit the walls, it's a little bit different than most cities. It's most cities here, you exit the walls, and there are still buildings around. In Galmador, there's really not that many buildings right outside the gates. There's a small handful here and there. There's the farms. As you walk out, there are the typical dwarven mushroom farms. So you've got stocks of that are, some of them are like kobold height. Some of them slightly bigger. So the eating mushrooms don't tend to get that much larger than that. But there's also normal crops like Mostly stuff that doesn't need quite as much sunlight, so there's some wheat and stuff like that. But you eventually pass through some farmlands. Once you're starting to get towards the edge of the interior of this mountain, and you're quite a bit away from the city. You're maybe like a good 45 minutes walk out. You start to spy a kind of it's pretty big in the grand scheme of things. You would probably describe it as looking somewhat like a farmhouse or something like that. So it is 2 stories. It is in a dwarven style, so it's like very square and like slightly almost Adobe brick looking in a certain sense. There is kind of a porch, although of course there is no overhang to it. It's like a slab. Really have to worry about the weather right where it's at. As you guys approach this building, you can also start to smell on the air like a sulfur, some acridness, variety of chemically smells coming from this domain. And Cala says, that's where we're heading. He lives over there. You walk up and begin to approach. And Uba and Alveron, you both notice what to everybody else, even those of you with slightly higher passive perception, it just seems to be like a dark spot on the ground. You both notice sitting there a large dog that is like pitch black in coloration, sitting down, waiting. Although it is not like the hellhound that you found. It is clearly a normal-ish looking dog, though it is wearing a sort of armor set that seems to have been dyed similar color to their fur, and it is metal. It's sort of like a breastplate, although it's mostly covering their back. As you guys approach, the dog stands over. And you sniff and go, woof, woof. Kind of slightly warning you, those of you more familiar with animals, but also clearly like alerting the owner. Cala continues to walk forward. The rest of you keep pace with it. After about a moment, you all see the door, which was slightly ajar before, swing outward. And a man walks out. He is, you certainly wouldn't describe him as old, although probably grizzled would be a better term. His exact age is maybe hard for you to place, but definitely late 30s to early 40s, in that kind of range. He's got some graying at the temples, brown hair that's kind of pushed back and pulled into a not like a ponytail. It's more slightly Ned Stark-ish in terms of style. You would probably describe them as being quite handsome, but they have a clearly like a nose that's been broken at least twice and not set quite properly, so it's kind of off again a little bit. That kind of gives it this slightly more intimidating picture. It's also got scars here that look like claws from some creature, and one long one that seems to be more from a bladed weapon on his left hand. He is currently not wearing any armor or anything. He's kind of dressed out in dark clothing, like kind of an off blue-black color that, in the dark would probably make him very different. He does have a long sword strapped to his side, and he has at his belt a couple of potions. Looks over at you, says, Maximus. The dog kind of like look over, standing up and slightly like going bouncing back and forth on the front two paws a little bit. He steps out as you guys kind of meet. What's your business here? At which point, I don't know if you remember me. We met a couple times. I was with Orlis. Yeah, I remember that. I have read. Can I do anything for you? Looks at the group. Cala will kind of glance at to see if Will wants to take the lead on this before, if not, continue it or like.
Yeah,
Will describe their situation.
Will says, well, we're here to, I don't know. We're here because Cala's master, Tarlis, has been abducted, and we have reason to believe that he's in Harkantor. And Cala has told us that you would be an appropriate guide into that area. Also, as a demon hunter, you'll be useful in dealing with the demons that we believe have abducted him.
At this point, he crosses his arms and gives you all like a long look. You can see, as opposed to you, his eyes are very pale, almost to the point of they're more silver than white, but they're like clearly not in the normal human spectrum of eye colors. Looks at you for a long moment. Well, you certainly brought enough people. Harkantor is very dangerous. I've never been in the city myself, but could take you there. Say you're looking for Orlis.
We are.
Well, probably not going to be able to make it on your own. I suppose I'm somewhat obligated to out. If only because I do not find it. Look capable enough. Can you compensate my time in any way?
Will looks expectantly at Cala to handle that.
Cala says, yes, I will be able to compensate you, assuming it will cost more than your usual fee. Yeah. Yeah, it will. Yes, I'll be able to cover that. Give you half now, half when we get back. Say 2,000 each way. On the low side, but for Dorless, yeah, I'll do that. You looking to set out now? You're certainly prepared enough for it.
I think Will just nods.
Well, I'll need just to give me, say, an hour or so to get myself together. Folks call me Old Bart. You all got names?
Hopefully.
Will, given that she's been talking so far, she inclines her head and says, Willow is my name.
Well, got it.
Medea.
Will exudes such Will energy that you introduce yourself as Willow and it's still Will.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right?
Sulveran.
Yeah, like
Sulveran just like looks down at himself and very, very flat. Indeed.
Mostly a Gathite.
Half.
Alveron.
you don't look like a half Gathite.
What is it that your people say? Looks can be deceiving. I have it on firm authority that I am merely a half Gathite.
I'm gonna have him make an insight check right on this.
Really deeply offensive to Leon. Sulveran's like, I'm actually a half Gathite now.
Okay. Sulveran, half Gathite. But you see,
Sulveran just
he seems to think that, or has come to the conclusion that you're joking.
and they are only. Oh.
I think Uba says, "My name's Uba, and this is Kojin." And yeah, I was gonna say Uba picks up Kojin, but I don't think Uba would be able to do that
You
anymore.
strained for a second. And as he said, he kind of since you introduced Kojin, he said, "Oh, this is Maximus. You can call him Max. He'll be coming with us." As Max kind of steps forward, cautiously sniffs at Kojin before doing like some back and forth on his front paws.
I think Will Sorry, go ahead.
He's a scout dog. He can fight, but don't expect him to jump in for any of you.
Will is absently like extending her hand towards Max, just to, like so that he can get used to her. But Flax, who is very like inquisitive, just runs down her arm and like is perched on the end of her palm, which she can barely hold up, even though it's a like fey cat. She can barely lift a cat just on her hand, and is like sniffing in that direction with its weird light tentacle whiskers.
Goes in for a slight nuzzle, if he can. I don't know where we're at positioning.
I think it makes sense. Flax is very like excited about a new pet that's not clearly a dragon. But Will's less fond of dogs, but Flax is very on board.
He will glance over then at Alveron. Only other adult who has.
Well, say I did try, but I think Uba and I overlapped, unfortunately, which was bound to happen. But when he looks at me, just Alveron.
Oh, and this is my apprentice, Calandra.
Hi. Hello. Down.
Whenever
You're
Alveron introduces
bringing them
himself,
with? Okay. Stick with me, kid. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
Oh, I was gonna say, I feel like in universe, probably people still have the same errors that Sulveran and Alveron of like saying our names, or if he's going to after Alveron introduces himself, very gravely lean slightly forward and say, "No relation."
You don't share the same mother? All right. Well then, I'm gonna get my thing. We're gonna be traveling together. Lay down. Rules is a strong word. Some guidelines, say. If I tell you to walk a certain way, I expect you to do. It's for your own safety, and it's for. Max will tend to scout ahead. Should warn us of if we're going to encounter it, if he's able. While we're in the tunnels, it's going to be dark. I prefer to travel without light. Is that going to be a problem? Help! I have some potions for myself that I can use. I've got one or two for we'll say normal folk.
Brought specialized lanterns just in case if we do need light, that'll only form in cones, and they'll hold out the bullseye lanterns.
Okay. I prefer to travel with those off, but it's better than a normal. So if we
must travel with them off, I can.
At a certain point, you're not going to be able to use, as you just assumed. We're going to harm.
I can see in any darkness. I should be fine.
Do not have that ability, but I'm fine with being led around if necessary.
Right. We get into a fight. He'll pull a potion off of this like bandolier he's got. You take this. It doesn't last for that long, so don't use it unless. And he gives you a potion, essentially a potion.
Gotcha.
Will also mentions that she doesn't have dark vision.
Right.
And Sulveran,
Okay.
I can see for a time, but it is limited.
Okay. As long as you're okay with traveling mostly in the dark, we'll be okay. It's more that when you're down there, significant amount of light, target, falling. So I prefer to travel without. Plus, it makes Max harder to see. It's good for us. He'll hand Will a second potion.
I just remembered that I can see through my cat's eyes, which cats do have dark vision. So
then you're fine.
I will just have a cat hat for this entire adventure.
Do you say that, or do you just not comment?
Oh no, Will says, "Oh no, I do have a way to see." I remember.
You can't see through your own eyes when you're doing that, though.
It's alright if it's on my head. I just look like I'm taller. Will's brain will adjust.
If Will wants, Medea will say, like, so you don't have to try and walk that awkwardly. You can just ride on the back of the elk and just have the cat perch on your shoulder.
I think we'll look at the elk and look at like the flags, and say, "All right, if it proves to be a difficulty, I will take you up on your offer, Medea."
Speaking of that, there's going to be times where you're not going to be able.
That's fine. I can summon it if we get to the other side later.
A good portion of the time, but there are, if we're going to Harkant, I'm going to prefer to use smaller tunnels, and it's going to be single file.
That's fine. I wouldn't have brought it along if I didn't know how to work through that. I appreciate the consideration.
All right.
Sulveran has just slowly crossed his arms over his chest as like this has been just being described further, and he just slowly nods and he says, "Quiet, dark, crouching. Is there anything else we need to be cautious of? Our sense, specific sense?"
If you could do something about that, run on some mud never hurts, although usually the light is a bigger issue. It's going to be pitch black. Even those of you with dark vision, there's going to be times where vision is more limited. Certainly helps. Be aware. Get to Harkon. A couple times I've been there, there's magical darkness around stuff.
I can see magical darkness if we need to go through that.
Okay. But for the rest of you, be aware. Oppressive, not just darkness, is an oppressive aura. So be prepared. You see something, shadows reaching out for you. The important thing is to stay calm. Try not to scream or make noise. They won't get you. But it's going to feel like they're going to try to grab
you. If most of the time we're not going to be able to see anyway, but in the darkness we might see flickers of shadows that will unnerve us, is it not better to blindfold ourselves so that we take away the ability for our sight to trick us?
If you can walk blindfolded pretty well, it wouldn't help.
Well, I don't see how it would be any different to walk blindfolded than to be walking simply blinded. Perhaps we should make use of that chain again.
In magical darkness, I can serve as an aid to see what's in front of us as well.
I can see through it too. It's just those of you with dark vision, you might be comfortable or more used to in limited visions, still being able to see pretty well. You will not be able to see. Usually, you'll be limited to about 30 feet. Whether you're an elf or a dwarf or whatever. You will probably, I don't know how your magic works, but should be fine. Any clerics?
Sulveran just looks down at the numerous symbols of Mordain, and then back up.
One. Still?
It's a different kind of relationship.
I don't know. Understood. As he pulls out a jangle of every major god symbol. I'm not picky, Ron. Right?
Will smiles at that.
Right.
Like as a symbol from every major non-denominational religion.
He says, I'll be right back. Well, give me an hour. I wasn't expecting you to go in darkness. Like, cracks his head and cracks his neck rather. Turns around. Max still sits in this.
After he goes inside, I think Will deposits Flax to do whatever Flax wants to do. The weird little cat. But from her sleeve, the spellbook begins to unfurl, and it unfolds all the way until it's just touching her finger, and then it wraps around her eyes, and becomes like a semi head scarf turban thing. And she beckons to Flax, and then Flax sits on top of it. So it's blindfolding her, but she's seeing through Flax's eyes. And now all my spells come from my head. That seems like a smart thing to do.
I think Sulveran prepares his, but doesn't quite put it on yet. He's going to use the scarf that Medea gave, since his dark vision will only last for an hour. And then he's going to clear his throat and turn to the rest of the party. I do not do well in dark, tight, underground spaces. Feel free to intervene if you see it's necessary. And he looks to I think he looks to Medea first, but then Medea's quite short, so he looks to Will and he says, with a slap if necessary. And then he recalls like Medea's or Will's last punch, and he repeats that to Alveron.
Will uncoils the 15-foot long spellcloth until it's just around her eyes, and it just slaps you across the face. It does literally nothing. Has 1 pound of force behind it.
Perhaps if you had saved that for down there, I would be sufficiently surprised that it would shake me of something.
Then I cast inflict wounds through it. I don't have that, but that would be funny.
So you're kind of standing out here. You do hear some noises. Old Bart will kind of peek his head out and say, like I said, I have to put armor on and get some things. You can come sit down. Gestures into his building.
Will is practicing walking with a set of eyes that are like half a foot taller. So Will is happy to take a move around.
Make a dex saving throw. Your first time doing it. Yeah, it's not that hard. It's definitely like you're like slightly worse at judging distances because like it's not off. But, it's not that hard to just walk around and stuff. It's not that much of a vision.
Will's whole brain is spatial awareness all the time anyway, so like it's just adjusting that. It's adding 1 extra calculation.
Oh man, you've been rolling fire, which
If you were gonna shoot like a bow or something, that's when it would start to like difficult. But otherwise, it's you all kind of enter into Old Bart's home. It is a little bit messy. It's kind of just there's no, at least on this first floor, there's no walls whatsoever. There's a staircase leading up, and it's just otherwise like open floor plan. There's a table for like eating, a small kitchen area, and then a whole corner that just seems to be filled with different kinds of alchemical goods. Beakers. There's different things like bubbling and boiling up, steaming, and this seems to be the source of most of the acrid. You also see that there's another older dog in here, a brown dog with lots of white brown mouth. It just seems to be chilling, like kind of laying out. Goes back to kind of. You can see Old Bart quickly mixing a bunch of these different alchemical ingredients together, probably to potion different kinds that he. And you all kind of sit while he does this. He doesn't offer you any food or drink, although you know that there is some because you can see he's got like a couple. There's at least 2 empty bottles of probably wine next to a couple filled ones. And you can see that he's got like bread and cheese on the counter that's like recently been cut. And but at no point does he turn to offer you it.
Medea, getting hungry, just reaches into one of their pockets on like their pants and just pulls out like a handful of loose rice and just starts eating it.
Like uncooked loose rice?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I want to say that's an insane thing, but that kind of feels on brand.
That's Medea's underground ration food.
ow.
I think Will could certainly see versions of this situation where she's like, but why not just have nuts? Or many other things that last an enormous amount of time, but decides that it's really not worth it while also trying to stop her familiar swiveling around on its seat and looking in other places that she doesn't want it to.
Mm-hmm. Medea will offer loose rice to Sulveran, just looking like the impassive, like gesturing a hand over. Like this is like a real offer of kindness to them, like the most hopeful face they can make.
I want to cast Incendiary Cloud and blow this party up right now.
The funny thing
But
is,
it's right.
you guys have rations. You have bread and
Yeah.
hardtack and stuff that they could be eating.
Did Medea just bring uncooked rice? No other
Yeah.
rations?
Yeah.
Like, that's just a big part of their rations. They're like, this works for me.
Sulveran legitimately takes a small portion because it is rude to not take things that are offered.
Mhm.
Eats it with a face that is as straight as ever and says, "Thank you. That will be sufficient for me." And brings out an actual ration bar.
We'll eat
Medea's-
an apple because we were in a city today. Like, just a fine apple.
Yeah.
Medea gives a
access
big
to fresh
smile as if this has like been a perfect gesture to a friend, and this is all they need to do for the next week to show their like kindness, and they continue to eat their loose rice.
Um,
I'm imagining
gonna
like the
cast-
weirdest social checklist. That's just yes, one kind thing for a friend, pet an animal, did not kick the puppy who annoyed me. I have completed my social obligations.
I will
I'm
now
going
go
to
back to reading the same book I have read 40 times.
I'm going to spend a 3rd level spell slot descending to Cala that it's not right to eat uncooked rice. Don't eat uncooked rice, Cala.
no, I know.
Jack, are you
We
just
also-
being
we also will
Cala's
get up
video
and
game
start
loading
casting
screen?
a full spell, like the vocal incantations clear to everybody.
Yeah, I mean, they're
And then
casting
just-
sending. Like,
Yeah, Will cast sending in front of you all the time. And is looking at Cala. Like, this happens
Well,
a lot.
Okay.
because you don't have to vocalize sending. You can.
It has a verbal component, though. So
You have
there's
to.
still, like, a
You have to
verbal
cast
component
the
to
spell, right? But you don't have
But yeah.
to speak out the word.
There's like the sound of a wave crashing.
Because it has verbal, somatic, and material components, you have to like wave around stuff to make it work.
Yeah, it's obvious, but we'll cast sending like all the time.
Yeah.
Anyways, after a little bit, Kel will turn to you all and say, he's a bit on the rougher side, though. Sulveran. That's true for some of you as well. But he knows his stuff.
He would really not be out of place among either of the Gathite that I've spent time with.
Yeah, he's been down here for a long time, two decades maybe. Which again, you all know. You don't think he could be more than 50, so that's the majority of his life. Because there used to be, like, glance. You can see that he is like looking at a potion real quick and shaking it. There used to be more demon hunters here. Torlus told me that they call him Old Bart because he's the oldest demon hunter. Been around quite some time.
Oh, yes, they usually die in their 20s, from what I know.
It's not uncommon. Just be aware.
This man has probably seen most of his friends or compatriots die.
Yes,
Sulveran just
that is what I just implied, Adia.
Sulveran, who is like really bad at things, looks to old Bart, looks to Medea, and then just almost like helplessly glances over to Uba like, you realize that was too much, right? Like, it's not
Yeah,
just me.
even Uva looks a little bit surprised.
I cast sending to my simulacrum and just asked them to say something intelligent to me.
Alveron is just hitting the flask.
Old Bart.
I'm not sure what's in it, but I'm hitting the flask.
There's some like rum, but maybe a little bit of whiskey that you forgot to dump out first.
I don't discriminate at this point.
Old Bart, as you all are kind of having like this reaction to that comment, suddenly and quite stealthily, like sets down a crate of something on the table. It seems like potions. He says, "With any luck, you won't join them."
Oh, I don't know. Some of us might deserve it today.
Will, you shouldn't be so hard on yourself.
He glances
Will's happy
at
to
Will
know
and
that.
like gives you a small nod. I just got to put on my armor. And you see he walks over and begins strapping on instead of half plate, but you can see there's like lots of like extra padding and muffling around all the joints. And when he puts it on, it's much quieter than what you would expect. Something about his expertise in this seems to have negated most of the sound. It too is painted like a very dark black blue, and he also throws on a cloak that is the same color, kind of like the perfect darkness. He straps on a sword. He kind of looks at it. Those of you, Uba probably, and some of the others who like judge metal with a glance can tell it seems to be either made out of or plated with silver. He straps that up. He grabs a heater shield that he kind of throws onto his back, cinches it, and then puts on a pack that steps on, and straps a larger bandolier full of these potions to his. Max. Have you lead the way. Keep an eye on lead. Begins to walk out towards. Well, let's get to it. Steps out. You all kind of rise, begin to follow that. You can see he seems to let Max get a good, like, 100-ish feet lead ahead of him, at least while you're walking a really open area. And you all know, or will note now, that there are tons of different tunnel exits out of this larger central space. Some of them are like big and clearly like paved through, marked as being roads and whatnot. He elects to go down a smaller one that's a little bit closer to his home. Although smaller, it is still big enough that you could walk like 3 abreast quite easily, or maybe one in the. As you begin to descend and you leave this space, it does become dark quite quickly. The relative brightness, but it is gradual enough that even those of you without dark vision, your eyes slowly start to adjust, and you can still see like your hand in front of your face a little bit, and stuff like that. But those of you without dark vision, it is very dark down here. Just going through. You do hit spaces as you're walking through where there is light, mainly in the form of mushrooms. There are different kinds of bioluminescent mushrooms that can be found throughout depths of the Khor Mountains, but it's not constant. There are areas where you will leave chambers with some light and back into darkness. You will enter chambers with reflecting crystals that have very minor amounts of arcane energies within them that have some internal flow. There's a couple times where, as you're traveling on this first day, where you'll see old Bart just kind of stop suddenly, and after a moment, those of you with particularly good vision will see Max kind of like come trotting out from farther down one tunnel. He'll give like oof, oof. All right, and he'll look to all of you. He said, "There's some creatures, not demons, just in the nearby tunnels, but we're gonna be a little bit quieter section, just so we don't have to do. Not that dangerous, but and he'll lead you through, and you'll like walk past these. To some of you, like strange creatures burrowing through the rock, various different things. This particular group is like these large. They're not quite like some of you might be familiar with purple worms. They're not like quite that big, but they're large. Not pustulating, but like quivering worms, undulating. There you go, undulating worms that are burrowing down. That, as old Bart said, don't look that pleasant to mess with. You guys will creep by them with relative ease. So it's quicker. It seems to be quicker traveling than you were like permanently stealthing, but you are being quite stealthy. Thanks. It's just as you're traveling, old Bart will tell you you can talk just quieter. Probably going to be, depending on how many cave-ins might be, tunnel collapses. Roots down here, they're always changing. Probably it's going to be 3 days, maybe 4, to get down to Harkand. Not that far, quite deep.
Does Cala have dark vision or a way of seeing in the dark?
Question.
Cala's just. Did you say Kella or Cala?
Cala.
Cala can't. Like, Will's just walking next to Cala. But we're using the opportunity. Cala's doing like mental arithmetic.
No, but I suppose if we're discovered, then I'm okay at walking through the shadows, doing that. But
Okay, I was gonna suggest something if that Will would be doing, but Cala needed to be able to see. Yeah, I think Will is not. Even though Bart's like you can talk, Will is like happy to have the time to like just contemplate things and try and piece stuff together. So we'll walk with Cala all the time, and then we'll also occasionally walk next to Cala.
What's I'm just curious. What's everybody else's? You all like pretty quiet? Is anybody like talking?
He is on the back of their elk just working on the hat for Sulveran with the tools.
You mean Alveron's hat, right? We gotta hide Alveron's bolt.
Oh yeah, Alveron's hat. Sorry, thank you. I always confuse the two names.
Alveron is probably just very nervously quiet. I am used to open seas, or at the very least open skies. Underground is really not my scene. So, especially like this level of low visibility, not a fan. Not digging it.
Can I say that Uba is like actively trying to help you and has like grabbed your hand and is just pulling you along?
I am
like, "Come on, hurry
100% just going along with it. There's like no hesitation. Every once in a while, like almost as a security blanket, the little vial of seawater, I like jiggle it next to my ear so I can hear the sound of water. And just keep swimming. Just keep swimming.
I think Sulveran does ask when the cave-ins are mentioned, despite his desire to not know. He says, "And how often have you encountered a cave-in while you were down here?"
Pretty infrequent that events happen while the dwarves built their stuff pretty. Usually have enough. It does happen. But occasionally, the real worry is that some creature burrows down the wrong way they run into a tunnel and the whole thing. So the tunnels change, creatures create new tunnels, old tunnels go kaput. It's an ever evolving landscape.
Sulveran just nods very tightly. And if anybody comes like quite into range, you have to get very close to notice. But he is humming a variety of like Gathite. What like even if you don't know Gathite, it has that rhythm of a series of like lullabies, things you'd sing to children.
Okay, so it's just almost slightly ominous in the darkness as you're walking through.
It's very, very quiet though.
You occasionally pass by underground streams. Sometimes you can see them, sometimes you can only hear them. Old Bart will occasionally momentarily stop down near a mushroom or some other kind of ground foliage. Pull out a small knife and just like cut some off before tucking it away in one of his pouches, collecting various different plants that he might find. Where you go?
Sulveran would probably echo him if he would like not ask for deep explanations, but he would ask if it was okay, like if it was messing with the ecosystem as well. And he would just do the same thing. He's like, a person who does what I do.
No, he says, how much do you know about her? Or demon hunters? Classes mixing with lore.
And that's to Sulveran or the party.
As you're like doing this herbalism.
Very little. On meeting you, I have determined I should like to know more.
Well, some things that a lot of people don't know. Most of us are divided practices. Some people call them orders. So, form. Probably a long time ago there were ranks, stuff like that. These days it's mostly master has an apprentice, apprentice learns trade. Eventually master dies. That's how things go. My master, they call us mutants sometimes. We use alchemy to change ourselves. So some of the stuff I'm picking up, I'll mix into my potions and poisons, whatnot. You should not mix them necessarily into your potion, unless you know what you're doing. Stomach things that you can. Word of advice.
Then in that case, would they make effective poisons for others?
Some of them. Yeah. I'll point out good ones.
I would appreciate it. And perhaps more information when we return. And he just kind of gestures his head up.
Sure. That's a book. Been around. And he kind of, the conversation just ends. He stops talking. But after that point, occasionally he will, even if it's not something he'll take, he'll occasionally point out to you at, you'll see, the purple mushroom over there, got the white stem, red dots. That one's poisonous. You might be able to use it to make something to cook.
Sulveran will collect this and he goes over and he like taps Uba and indicates what he's doing as well. But then he looks at Uba and Alveron and it's like, perhaps I'm the collector.
Why don't you go ahead and also you have an herbalist kit or a poisoner's kit?
I have both now, I believe.
Okay. You can make me either an herbalism kit check or a poisoner's kit check, and Old Bart will give you advantage. While you do that, I'll be right back.
Alright. Is that just going to be my... Is that basically nature? What's that? Proficiency plus. Because I have the proficiency.
It should
Make-
be, yeah.
Int
So with you could use wisdom or int. So if you like to, you can substitute it with just a medicine check if that.
Yeah.
With advantage.
Okay.
Don't burn it.
No.
Yeah, you can throughout the course of the journey in total. I'll just say you will collect, maybe about a pound. I would write down like a pound of core, underground herbs or something to that effect that you. I have to get back into. I have to find the spot for old Bart where it doesn't hurt me, but I'm hitting where I want to hit. I'm
This is why
getting
you
there.
make voices that are not difficult.
I'm dialing it in. It's just you have to hit. You have to use the right part of the upper larynx. Not larynx.
He didn't talk this much last time either,
No, he did not.
because there were less people that wanted to interact with him.
Yeah, there were. It was mostly Elsa and Ify a little
Yeah,
bit.
and that was not a friendly relationship for a long time.
Ify didn't come in until later.
Yeah.
So, you guys, at the end of the first day, you eventually come to a spot which clearly has seen a lot more recent activity, and you can see at the walls there's been evidence of having recently been like away. Old Bart points says, "Fifth or mine, we'll rest here." Though the mine has been stripped of its mineral content, it is wide and it seems relatively safe. So you all kind of bed down. Old Bart will tell you that you can make light and a fire here, although be careful about the smoke. Where it's dry, whatever. You'll take a long rest for those of you.
Yeah, I'm gonna spend all my spell slots on sendings first.
Okay.
Let's check in on people around the world.
Can I get a healing on the sunburn? I'm
The
not gonna
underground
get another
sunburn?
one because we're underground now. But
There we go. Sulveran is going to set up that. How big is this area that we're in?
Big enough that you could do spells that I think you could think of.
Okay, so yeah.
Give it an exact dimension.
Incendiary cloud.
It's not like
We
it's not like a perfect square or a perfect circle. It's like weird in terms of dimensions, but it's large. Like you have plenty of space.
Okay, yeah.
Sean,
there's definitely plenty of
did you actually need healing for the sunburn, or were you joking? I'm like, did
I
you actually
mean,
take
it's not
damage?
mechanically. It's just
Oh, okay.
no.
There's probably some like sun bomb you could buy. Although Alveron's pretty white, I think, so maybe it doesn't help that much.
Yeah.
You have a
Yeah,
hat of
we-
disguise. You should just disguise your sunburn.
Or put
Yeah,
on
I
the
mean,
hat.
I do have the hat of disguise, but I'm not attuned to it anymore, so it's just a hat.
That also stops the sunburn.
That's
But-
even funnier.
But that is effective.
Um,
The hat's bonus is that it gives you just a little bit of swag.
at a moment that if old Bart has settled down and is doing stuff but seems like to be at rest, will approach him, still blindfolded and seeing through the cat, like she's preparing herself for when it has to be, like she's doing the thing she did with Cala, where it's like, well, you do it all the time and you add pressure to yourself to learn how to do it under pressure. But she approaches old Bart and she kind of sits. She probably kneels down in front of him because she doesn't tend to just sit on the floor. And says, "If you have a few moments, do you think you could explain some of the applications of blood magic as you understand them to me?"
Kind of like glances up at you. He's kind of sitting with his back slightly to Max, who's kind of curled up. Max kind of will like raise eye, not head at all. Head doesn't move, but raise like eyes and eyebrows up to you before returning to previous state.
Will looks deeply strange because it's like 15 foot of silk wrapped into a pile on her head, which then has a cat on top of it, and the cat's eyes are glowing.
Bart looks up at you and he says, I could, yeah. What do you
My
Magic's,
understanding.
it's just so you know, there are other orders who are a bit more attuned to magic. Fine. Focus on it. So we all have some base. I can guess some blood curses. Well, I can do some magic with weapon.
Will nods and is like probably scribbling some notes. My understanding of the nature of blood magic is that it allows you to better use things that are potentially outside of your capabilities. Can you tell me how, in particular, you fuel things with your blood? I'm curious about the potential to get more out of my own magical abilities.
Well, some people seem to think that you necessary to cut or otherwise cause physical harm to your person. Magic, but it's actually not true. You can draw upon the reserves without physically. It takes it slightly more practice. I would say it's a crutch. For me, I have I practiced some things. We call them blood curses. So, cast things are not quite like a arcane spell. It's although it's most similar to that. Not certainly not bard or cleric. Most of them are fairly weak. I can do them pretty quickly. I have a spell that can make a creature sort of their adrenaline rush to a degree that it is disorienting. But if I amplify it using blood magic, I can make it so that they're even particularly subsessed. No, this is me, not old Bart. Susceptible. My speech impediment's coming. Susceptible, particularly susceptible to spells affect the mind. So that's what my blood takes an effect which might be fairly minor, amplifies it to great. I've heard that wizards can do this too, and at times to even greater effect. Sorcerers as well. I don't know if it works for bards. I would think it would.
Oh,
You might have to
realistically, everything works for bards eventually. You just have to find the avenue. I'm trying to think of a spell. And she kind of like unfolds from the top of her head some of the spell cloth, and it like drops some like pinned scrolls to it. He says, I use a lot of scrolls, and I was trying to work out if I could perhaps manufacture a spell that, by giving of my own energy, could empower my ability to cast the scrolls. But she's like still thinking about it.
Maybe. I think I might have heard of things. I can tell you for sure that using blood magic in the making of scrolls is not really. But upon casting, there's an element to blood magic that is immediacy sacrifice. So, cruel mistress, say. He'll pull out his sword. to which Max like does like lift his head slightly. Put it on his hand and just like, and you'll see it will. He will do because it's so slightly cooler looking. He will do the lightning. Crackles with electricity is sort of.
I think Will's like really trying to note the moment that even though he just said that you don't need to cut yourself, she feels like there must be something demonstrative in the way that the blood crackles into electricity. Can I make another Arcana check to understand something of this sacrificial magic?
Yeah, sure.
Can I have advantage because all Bart's been so useful? I don't know what
most
I want to do.
Most people don't
with this.
ask him this many questions.
I was a 20 for such a long time.
Okay, 26.
26 though.
Yeah, so you see he kind of draws his hand against it, but he doesn't actually, there's no point where he draws blood. But you can see there is this, as the electricity is formed, there's like some kind of effect that seems like it's energy is drawn out of his arm, and you can see it like the veins pop, like seem almost as if like they're like really low on salt content and have been running really heated up for a moment. Slightly even this blackish quality to them that you can see with your dark vision, and that kind of flows into the sword and this as he does it. You understand. You think you'll have to try it to like really know how it works, but you think you understand. It seems like a lot of it is the intention and the meaning of sacrifice in this magic. It's a very particular kind of magic that's a little bit different from both of the kinds that you practice. Although you would probably say it's a little bit more similar to the bardic magic because it's more about like intention of action and stuff like that. Whereas like the wizard magic is all about like the memorization, the learning, the mastery, and the intention is important when you're casting, but it's not as like primal as like what he's doing.
Do I think that the understanding of the sacrifice is enough, or do I think I would have to formulate like a specific use of it into a spell that then like does something else? Can I try to summon an infinity dagger that is imbued with something from my sacrifice? I think she would be like, well, I should try.
Yeah,
before,
go ahead.
Like, sure, it's a cantrip, so.
Okay. I'm gonna have you make. Is it the bard cantrip?
Infinity daggers is a wizard cantrip.
I'm gonna have you make. Okay, it just matters because of what. I'm gonna have you make basically a straight intelligence ability check. I think you would have disadvantage if not for the fact that old Bart has like just demonstrated it. Will be really.
Sure, I just was double checking that it's running off intelligence. So, all right. 22.
Okay. You kind of go to summon the dagger, and when you do so, you concentrate. You try to replicate like this almost like pulling out from yourself, from your arm up into the spell in a way that you don't normally do. It's not normally you kind of like form it where it is, and then this is like it's like pulling it out of yourself a little bit. And I'm gonna go ahead and you roll better.
I think Will's also in no way thinking of regulating the damage it's doing. She's like, well, I'm trying to make sure it happens, so I'm putting as much Like,
Okay.
I'm just willing to
I'm
sacrifice
gonna
a
have
lot.
that be or die then.
Yeah.
Still, because you rolled well still. Okay, so it does, cost you like a fairly significant chunk of this life force that you've been pulling out. And as you do so, I'll let you describe like how it affects the Infinity Dagger, but there's something about it that is different.
I think normally Will's got a very, like, the Infinity Dagger, the magic in it is that there's infinite of them and they exist ethereally and are arcane missiles. But this one, as she pulls it out, it's like jagged and ripped, and it's like there's an almost like it's not a manufactured dagger. There's like a primalness to it that is about like the way that a dagger would rip from something. Like if you reached into stone and you pulled out the shape of a dagger, it would never be as clean as her dagger normally is. So this one's like jagged and it's spinning and it's like got a red tinge to it from the like life force that it's cost her. And also in the casting of Infinity Dagger, she has to throw it. So like it appears, it spins in her hand for a second and then it just shoots upwards into the ceiling. And then I think she's probably also bleeding from her arm. Like the dagger, she made the dagger in her arm and it ripped out that way as well.
He looks at you as you do this. He says, "For a first try, that's pretty good." And you can also tell as you do this, the dagger was more powerful, certainly. I think you're not sure exactly how much more powerful, but definitely it was not just your normal Infinity Dagger damage. That extra. Although, there was a pretty steep cost.
Yeah.
In the future, I will let you do this. So we will do, if you want to do this again,
We can
spell,
work something.
It'll probably be a similar process unless you take a level or a feat.
Yeah.
Later on. You make like some check and you'll take some amount of damage.
Sure.
Yeah, we can think about that.
Yeah.
He says you he'll glance over towards Sulveran and say, half Gathite. The friend is bloody.
Sulveran is not quite to the point of regretting his joke yet, but almost there.
Don't you worry,
And
old Bart's gonna make you.
he has been. He didn't really need this notification because he has been watching the whole time, quite fascinated.
Just saw a
in his-
dagger like erupt out of Will's bicep.
Yeah, I mean, he's pretty interested in old Bart, what old Bart can do anyway. So, he just like reaches out to.
Before you touch Will to heal her, Will like really closely examines, like takes off her coat, and really closely examines the wound because she's trying to like learn more about the human body and medicine and stuff. And she's like prodding her own like open wound. It's like eviscerated muscle and stuff in there. And then finally the pain is enough that she's like, oh, all right.
Sulveran just his hand is just like hovering, not quite touching, because he too is studying this mark, and he before he heals Will, he just like looks up at them with just like a very slight nod, and then of course will heal it with far less slyness that when he did Alveron of you did this to yourself. For Will, he just
Even though Will specifically did this to herself.
yeah, exactly.
It's all for science.
Name of science.
An interesting trick.
I wonder if this is the first time that Sulveran's had to heal Will. That can't be real. It must have happened before.
I think it definitely happened before, but it's not very often.
Not like the slaps that Uber gets all the time.
I think in the Iracondis fight, it definitely happened.
I also occasionally get like mass healing wood, like heals.
Yeah.
Also, I like that old Bart even doesn't believe in my ability to heal myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could have killed it yourself. Old Bart was just like, there's a cleric nearby. That's the cleric.
That's all clerics do in Old Bart's eyes.
They heal Bart.
Yeah.
Clerics are important. Keep people alive. Old Bart, I think at that point will go back to like he's kind of just going over some ingredients that preparing. Sulveran, since you're kind of you seem to understand that his potions. He seems to be getting ready to recreate them in the morning. And you can see the ones he has seem to almost be like fading, losing some color and stuff like that. You can tell he's brought like tons of supplies with him. Make these repeatedly, but you seem to understand that his particular potions don't last forever. The potions he's making they seem easier to make or quicker, but they only last like a day before he has to remake. And with that, unless somebody else wanted to do anything in this little bit of downtime, rest. You're in this mithril. Wake up the next day. You continue onwards, and you've kind of, at this point, Old Bart seems to move you from these kind of what feel like very offbeaten tunnels to some that are slightly larger, but clearly quite worn down. Occasionally, you will pass through a massive tunnel, which some of you will note clearly is a dwarven road down here in the underground. But this one that you pass across, you don't go down it, you pass across on your way to another. It's particularly worn down and is not actively maintained. You walk on for a little bit, and as you go on, you're going downwards very clearly. Every time, or most of the time, you'll come to a crossroad, and most of the time, Old Bart will pick the one that is descending the steepest, or seems to descend the steepest. So clearly, you're definitely way beneath where Galmador was, and that was already quite, for all of you, quite deep. Now you're way beyond that. You're going really down far into the depths of this place. You still pass by all these various different minor light sources here and there, crystals, mushrooms, occasionally creatures, mostly insects, give off some bioluminescence of their own. But it starts to become slightly less frequent further down you go. At one point, okay. But yeah, I'm gonna show.
Great.
Um,
Hire a guy, pay him 4,000 gold, he gets lost.
It's actually not
David.
bad in this case. At one point, you walk down, and you suddenly, even though none of you are really carrying torches or anything, there's a brilliant. As lights are bouncing back and forth, almost as though you're looking up at stars of some kind, like Milky Way strips and bands of light. Old Bart will say, any of you ever seen mithril veins?
I
Well,
imagine that now we
okay.
are.
So snarky today.
Very good. It is the only reason that I stay employed. The mithril mines near. A lot of people died for this, or have died for this. At that, he starts to walk on. But you're all looking at this. There's probably a large fortune here. These here walls, as they say.
Sulveran, without even looking back, just reaches out and like kind of collars Uba lightly by the back of their neck and just keeps them walking.
Like that you read my mind because I was literally going to ask if Uba could start picking up small bits of mithril off the ground.
You can make
when
me...
you let go of Alveron's hand to like start scrounging for a dime's
You're like-
worth of mithril, just Alveron is just cool. It's fine. Cool.
if you want, you can make me a quick investigation check to see if you can find like
sweet.
some loose, easily accessible mithril that you can maybe pry out with your kobold claws.
13.
13. You find a little bit. There's a couple points where you're like, if I had like 10 minutes, I could get this big chunk. But nobody seems to want to stop for that long, and especially not stop for you to make a bunch of noise mining stuff here in the dark. You pick up. I want to be very clear. It's like a fist-sized, like raw piece. So there's still rock, like normal rock attached. But you know, you've been around some stuff. There's like a good amount of mithril in here. Maybe enough to make, say, like a dagger, like a something like that. But not a ton. Still, it's worth probably quite a bit. Sold, even if you just sold this raw piece. Probably not as much if you sold it in Galmador location, but elsewhere.
Good to know.
It weighs. It's mithril, so it only weighs about a pound. You eventually exit this area, leaving. There's also, when you're in the untapped, we'll say, mithril mine, there is a bit of warmth there. There's, mithril has some inherent magical qualities. It seems to drive away the darkness. Even Alveron, although feeling slightly lost at sea without Uba's hand, it's not quite as bad as some of the earlier parts that you.
No. I'm not lost at sea.
Say, Uba will
That's
come
the
back after
fucking
the
problem, Andrew.
Uba
I
didn't
used that
completely
phrase on
abandon you just for a minute.
You move through this area, and I'm going to have everybody make me perception checks.
You'd think I'd remember things like if cats have keen senses, but I think they don't.
No, I don't think they do either. I think it's just...
It uses my perception still through their eyes, right?
That's correct, yeah. Although you will get advantage
there it is.
if they have advantage from...
Yeah, I'll double check because that's finally a bad roll. Cat diving.
I think this whole
They don't even have
time,
dark vision.
Sulveran's
Which
like
is
looking around
so
for
stupid.
herbs and stuff still.
Sulveran has such a high perception compared
Yeah.
to Will.
Yeah.
Well-
Compared to Will, I have a +5.
Oh, I thought you had higher.
No?
Well, I think
They both have
it's
plus 5s,
right
actually.
compared to Will because like the fact that Sulveran has anything high in an ability check compared to Will is
The difference is Will has it proficient and Sulveran doesn't. If Will was proficient in it, they would be significant. Or sorry,
Does it rely on
Sulveran
smell?
was- No, not enough in this case.
Then I don't
I
have
had to think
advantage. The reason I don't have expertise in perception is because Alveron does have expertise in perception.
Look at that, 21, buddy.
You also need to roll Medea's because they're out for Wi-Fi.
Oh, they step up.
Also,
Wi-Fi.
that
That dropped.
Okay. Oh, power.
Uba was too busy looking at the mithril to even notice anything else.
Can you roll for Cala? Because Cala's going to crit.
Sure,
and Cala
I'll roll
will
for
tell
Cala and Cala.
This is the advantage to bringing the ginormous party.
Yeah,
Cala does not
it's only
have
useful for visitors.
perception. That's not one of them. They still got, respectable.
To be fair to Will was watching Uber mine Mithril the whole time.
Some of you should
That turned around.
also, not Will, but Alveron, can you roll with disadvantage? Because this is somewhat site-based. We'll also you also will know, this is something I hadn't mentioned, but at the beginning of every day and on each journey, old Bart quickly quaffs a potion and his eyes seem reflective in that kind of cat-like way. Alveron, such a big swing.
Went from 27 to a fucking 1, boys.
Sulveran, you're kind of, staying pretty perceptive. Everyone else is slightly out of it. You've been traveling in the dark for a long time at this point. You left a bit late in the day, so it's been like a full day, basically, of traveling in the dark, like a full 24 hours almost at this point. So, some of you are kind of... Sulveran, though, it doesn't seem to bother you that much, and you have the normal sight, so you're pretty okay in that. You kind of notice right at the same time that old Bart kind of seems to stop for a second. As you hear something in the distance, a loud half moment later, you see Max like quietly but quickly, like dog loping up, and old Bart says, "Draw steel." Pulls out his sword. Everybody, I think, in this moment seems to explode into like reaction. Grabbing weapons and stuff. Old Bart, I say it kind of quietly. Old Bart says it more like, "Draw steel," like saying loudly. You all see, trailing behind Max, what seem to be two large demonic shapes entering into the chamber. And that's where we're going to end the session.
Oh,
Nice effects
Well,
there.
fuckles.
Yeah, we definitely don't have time to do a combat, but this was a good spot.
I mean, what if I just killed them both immediately? What
There
if
you
I
go.
just cast like a 5th level spell and it just all crits all day?
Crits all day.
Maybe we'll start next
all
session and it will be a 15-minute combat.
I twin spell banishment.
There you
They're
go.
done.
easy peasy.
Good work.
Have we
They just
ever
have
had
to
less
kill.
than a half-hour combat, honestly?
I don't think so.
Probably
Sorry, have we
not.
ever had less than a 15-minute round?
Yeah, I think we
Certainly,
have.
because you fought Vernal 1-on-1.
Session 0.
Oh, fair.
I think that fight might have taken less than a half hour, actually. Because that was only like 3 or 4 rounds. Because there was like, I think you crit and he crit. And then it was like, well,
Yeah,
we
it
need
was-
to get the fuck out.
Yeah.
So that was probably one of the shorter combats.
I guess I should have specified where we have the whole group.
I'll be short. I think this one's just going to get we're going to shred through these 2 demons.
There's a lot of you there.
I have faith in us. I also think that probably one of us will die, but that's fine.
Yeah. It will be old Bart. He'll just be left.
Yeah.
Well,
No,
what do we do now?
God.
Yeah, this guy. Well, at least we can loot the money that we paid him.
Was anyone dropping breadcrumbs? No.
Well, it's good since Ramona.
Literally, we can just teleport.
Internet seems to not
we
be
could.
working. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and sign us off. Real quick, if you aren't subscribed on YouTube, do that. If you're not following us on Twitch, do that. If you don't mind throwing some money our way, you maybe got a Amazon Twitch Prime subscription. You about subbing on our Twitch channel. You can do that now. And eventually, we're gonna.
Kind of a big deal now.
I'm gonna try to get some emotes. We've been talking. I think I had a couple good ideas. Like some other people have been thinking about it. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you next week.